Welcome, everybody, to another session on enhancing your relationship during this stay-at-home situation that we're in. I'm getting calls from couples that are in stress, and of course, all of us are in a level of stress at this particular time, but it can have a toll on our relationships. So I want to share some things with you today. I want to talk to you about enhancing your relationship by learning to hold on to yourself. You know, I've been doing marriage work with couples for many years now. And here's one of the things that I've observed in the hundreds of people that I've worked with over the last 20, 30 years. And that is that it's generally not the marriage that's the problem or the relationship. It's what we bring into the relationship. Now, that might sound a little strange to you, but all of us bring certain things into the relationship. We bring our past history. We bring our unresolved issues. We bring those issues that we're hoping to get fulfilled from the past. Now, we don't do that at a conscious level, generally at a very subconscious level. But I want to share some things with you today from the research, reading that I've done, some of the practical work that I've done with people. And hopefully this is going to be helpful to you during this very critical time. In fact, if you do this work now, it's going to pay off in every area of your life going forward after we're through this coronavirus pandemic and getting on with life. So if you've heard me teach at all, you've heard me talk about learning to hold on to yourself. Now, holding on to yourself is one of the four pillars of emotional strength, what I call the DNA of strength and courage. It's the ability to learn about yourself, put it in everyday language, what triggers you, what's causing you to behave the way that you're behaving, whether it's toward your spouse, in your children, your work, what is causing you, and learning to discover that. Now, the way that we learn to discover that is not beating ourselves up for negative behavior. That doesn't help any of us. But being more curious and compassionate about our behavior, this is where we learn to hold on to ourselves. Now, when we recognize that these triggers are in us, they're not in our spouse, they're not in our children. Sometimes people say, well, she triggered me, or she set me off, or she made me angry, or he made me angry, or he hurt me. Well, the truth is, those triggers are in you. They're not in the other person. It's what you're bringing to the relationship. Now, none of us do it on purpose. These are things in our subconscious to even unconscious mind that cause us to respond in ways that generally we wished we hadn't responded. So let me talk a little more about this. As we learn to take ownership of those triggers, ownership of our behavior, ownership of our anger, ownership of our hurts, ownership of our wounds, then we're able to start dealing with them in a more positive way. Now, one of my favorite books is called the Heart Math Solutions. I know it's a strange name. But it's an institution. It's Heart Math Institute. They study the relationship between our heart, our physical heart, and our brain. And they came up with this name. And if you want to get the book, it's called Heart Math Solutions. Hard to even say, by Doc Childry and Howard Martin. It's a great read if you're interested in this kind of thing. But here's what they say in their studies, what they have discovered. I'm just going to read it to you so I don't mess it up. Lack of self-management causes a continuous and damaging stress buildup in your system. Much misery, emotional and physical, results when the mind bounces back and forth with anxious thoughts about the day, the future, the past, wondering what it should be. See, that always gets us in trouble. What should have been, could have been, would have been. It keeps us from living in the present. Now, this is where we get into trouble in our relationships. We start living in what ought to be, should have been, could have been, and we're not living in the present reality. So what happens is we end up second guessing ourselves all the time, dragging our old emotions. Our mind drags our old emotions into the current reality. To disperse this stress that accumulates as a result of this thinking, this behavioral thought pattern, the mind looks for stimulating diversions and mindless tasks, rarely seeing that that's what's causing all of the stress. Now, this is what's happening. I heard a report the other day that many think alcohol sales is up by 100%, I suppose, and pornography is up, and just mindless things to try to divert our attention. Well, these things actually add to our stress level rather than helping us deal with our stress level. Now, we generally do these things until there's some kind of crash. Either we go into an emotional collapse or our relationship goes into a collapse, and we don't know what to do with it. Well, I want to give you 4 things that are very, very powerful in the research from the Heart Math Institute. Number 1, stress is a matter of perception. It isn't the events themselves that are stressful, it's our perception of them. So think about it in these terms, even what we're going through right now. Some people are loving staying at home. I'm not one of those people. But having the right perception, if you're seeing this as, oh, the government's controlling us, this is worthless, this is not necessary, your stress level is going to go up. But as has been emphasized so much, if you're seeing this as a way of protecting ourselves and protecting others, our stress level is going to go down. Second thing, continuation. Stress isn't about just the major problems in life. Stress accumulates as a result of our not managing the little things, our habitual reactions. Remember, habitual reactions are those reactions that we're not thinking about. They're generally not appropriate to the current situation. They're subconscious and they're habitual. We do them over and over and over again. And then our actions, how we are responding, our opinions, irritations, and frustrations. These are all very negative kind of mindsets and reactions that add to our stress level. So it's not about what's happening at the moment. Number 1, it's our perception. And number 2, it's our accumulation of negative responses. And then the third element, resentment, anger, frustration, worry, disappointments, all negative emotional states, justified or not. They take a toll on your heart, on your mind, and your whole body. Stress is the number 1 cause of most all of our illnesses today. Now, here's the hope. Here's a remedy. By learning to access your core values, in the heart math, they call this your heart power. What's in your heart, your values, who you really are. In fact, I was working with a client this week that totally falling apart under the stress of a toxic relationship, and then losing her job as a result of the coronavirus. And they had just moved into a brand new house and all of the stress levels that go along with that. And she was totally at the bottom. So I asked her to start telling me some things that she knew was true about herself. She started tapping into some very powerful emotions about who she really is when everything is going good. Great mom, a great wife, a great friend, a hard worker, honest, integrity, and a good mother. And her spirit started to lift, tapping into those core things. Now, sometimes we're so far at the bottom we can't even find one, but they're there. Think about things you've done, things you've accomplished. Be liberal with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Now, when we tap into these, you're bringing positivity to your system. And you're replacing negative chemicals in your brain with positive chemicals in your brain. And the stress level starts letting up. This is huge for us, and it's extremely important. Now, moving on, I want to talk a little further about this. See, we have to be willing to engage in self-confrontation. Now, self-confrontation is a necessity for your own personal growth and development, but not the kind of self-confrontation that you're generally thinking about. Oh, I'm so bad, or I'm messed up, or I'm stupid, or I can't do anything right. No, that's not the self-confrontation I'm talking about. If those things work, we'd all be great. We'd all be in good health. We'd all be rich. We'd all be excellent. But we have to learn to stand up for ourselves in our self-compassion and being curious. What's causing this to happen? What's causing me to behave this way? And not beating yourself up. As I've said in some of the other videos, stop beating yourself up for beating yourself up. That doesn't work either. So now, when we start dealing with our own fears, now, you've heard me say this before, but one of the things that fear is often displayed is anger, particularly with somebody that we're in a relationship with. We come across with anger, but actually we're in fear. And we use anger to hide the fear. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we angry about? What are we hurt about? And then what are we fearful of? Extremely important. When you can identify the fear, then you own it, you can deal with it. Instead of fear controlling you, you get to control the fear. Instead of anger controlling you, you get to control the anger. You have to own it. That's extremely important. Now, confronting your own selfishness, your own hatred, confronting your own manipulation of others, confronting your need to withhold affection, withhold comforting words. Those are extremely, extremely important things for us to confront ourselves in. And then acknowledging your projections, what you're projecting onto other people. See, there's an important verse in the Bible. It said, the scripture says, to the defiled, all things are defiled. To the pure, all things are pure. It underscores the truth that we don't see the world as it is. We don't see others as they are. We see them as we are. So if we're hurt and angry, we only see hurt and anger. If we if we have negativity, we only see negativity. We never see it from the other person's point of view. In fact, one of my coaches told me this week that she had had a real breakthrough with an estranged brother, that they haven't talked to each other in years. And they had a long conversation during this sheltering in on the phone. And she said, for the first time, I listened to his perspective. What it was like to have lived life for him. I'd always argued with him before. It's not true. What you're saying isn't true. But she listened to his perspective, and compassion took over. And she said, for the first time, I had compassion, understanding, and respect. Wow, that's a huge, huge step. Now, another thing that we ought to be able to do can be a huge, huge transformational step. 3 words: I was wrong, or I am wrong. Now, doesn't matter whether your partner says that or not. This is about you. This is you learning to hold on to you. Not dependent on how your spouse or partner responds, even your children, not dependent on how they respond. See, if you're depending on their response for you to be okay, you're not holding on to you, you're holding on to them. So getting a hold of yourself. Now, next point, you have to tolerate the pain of growing. Yes, mobilizing yourself toward growth, your value, the value you aspire to, requires going through the pain. There's a saying in physical workout, no pain, no gain. Well, that's true emotionally. We have to face the pains. Now, while holding on to yourself is not easy, the benefits to you in your marriage, your relationship, is incalculable. This can turn everything around in a hurtful or toxic relationship and can enhance any relationship. See, holding on to you allows you to pull out of negative interactions and conduct yourself in ways that lead to positive behaviors instead of that habitual routine of negative responses, if that's where you've been. It lets you break the characteristics of your communication, your habitual topics. My experience is people tend to argue about the same things over and over and over again. It becomes pattern. It creates negative tones, and we have to break those. Instead of matching your partner's feelings and emotional tones, when you're locked into a protracted argument, you start taking charge of your own emotional state. In Life Impact, we call this standing on your own 2 emotional feet. Instead of reacting to your partner, you take charge of you. Hopefully this has been helpful, and we're going to get through this, and life is going to be good. God bless you. Talk to you soon.